night. On First at 9 this Monday, the 19th of January 2026. Case continues. Court extends the remand of 10 suspects arrested over the Trincomalee Buddha statue incident until January 28th. Education upheaval. Deputy Director General of the National Institute of Education placed on compulsory leave over the controversial Grade 6 English module. 2 other officials suspended. Island-wide protests continue, calling for the swift implementation of the Grade 6 curriculum reform. Under fire. Opposition continues to slam the president's statement on Buddhists visiting religious sites in Jaffna. Golden ambitions. National Gem and Jewellery Authority to ease taxes on imported gems. Hints at plans to establish a gold refinery in Sri Lanka.
Kalin baby so rupial 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9, brought to you by Derana News Channel, Sri Lanka's most trusted news source. I'm Derana Kara, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story. The 10 suspects, including Venerable Balangoda Kassapathera and 4 other monks who were arrested over the enshrinement of a Buddha statue in Trincomalee, were further remanded until January 28th by the Trincomalee Magistrates Court. This follows the Attorney General and the Trincomalee Harbour Police refusing to withdraw the charges filed against the suspects under the Coastal Conservation Act.
The complaint by the Department of Coast Conservation and Coastal Resource Management alleging unauthorized construction and the placement of a Buddha statue within the Trincomalee City Coastal Protection Zone was taken up before the Trincomalee Magistrates Court on January 14th. 9 of the 11 suspects named in the case appeared in court, including Chief Incumbent of the Sri Sambuddha Jayanti Bodhiraja Viharya in Trincomalee, Venerable Trikunamale Kalyanawansa Tissathera, Venerable Balangoda Kassapathera, Venerable Trikunamale Sukitawansa Tissathera, and Venerable Nanda Thera. Police filed charges under the Coastal Conservation Act and for illegal construction, after which the magistrate ordered the suspects be remanded until January 19th. While in remand custody, Venerable Balangoda Kassapathera initiated a hunger strike, which was later temporarily suspended. The case was recalled today before the Trincomalee Magistrates Court, where 9 suspects, including the 4 monks in remand custody and another suspect, were produced before court. During proceedings, the councillor representing the All Ceylon Buddhist Federation, appearing on behalf of the monks, stated that while the initial charges related to the altercation during the enshrinement of the Buddha statue allow a magistrate to grant bail under the Penal Code, subsequent charges filed under the Coastal Conservation Act do not grant such authority. The lawyers for the defendants added that they were prepared to remove the cover over the statue. Following a proposal made by the Attorney General in the previous hearing, they said that if the structure covering the Buddha statue was removed, the charges under the Coastal Conservation Act could also be withdrawn. They therefore requested that the court dismiss the charges under the Coastal Conservation Act and grant bail to the suspects. However, the Trincomalee Harbour Police objected, stating that the charges under the Coastal Conservation Act cannot be withdrawn until the writs and fundamental rights petitions filed against the police in higher courts are resolved. The State Council also requested additional time to review the relevant writs and petitions. After considering the submissions, the Trincomalee Magistrate ordered the further remand of the 4 monks, including Venerable Balangoda Kassapathera and 6 other suspects, until January 28th.
The police exerted heavy pressure, stating that the fundamental rights petition filed against them in the Supreme Court must be withdrawn. An agreement was reached that the magistrate could set a short date to determine whether bail can be granted to the suspects after considering the fundamental rights petition and other cases filed in high courts and the removal of relevant section of the Coastal Conservation Act.
ඔබේ සම හඳුනාගෙන ඖෂධීය ශාකසාරමය forever face wash එකක් භාවිතා කරන්න.
Protests continued across the island today, including in front of the Ministry of Education, demanding the immediate implementation of the Grade 6 curriculum revision, which was postponed by a year by means of a cabinet decision. However, education trade unions claim such protests stem from a lack of knowledge of proposed education reforms.
Protests rage on across the island, calling for the immediate implementation of proper education reforms, which were postponed by a year. A torchlight protest was organised by the Samagijana Balawegaya in the Kannathot area of Ruwanbala, calling for a set of optimal education reforms. Tensions flared when a group of individuals arrived at the scene and attempted to disrupt the torchlight protest. Meanwhile, representatives of the 2026 Grade 6 Parents Union staged a silent protest in front of the Ministry of Education, demanding the immediate implementation of Grade 6 reforms. A group of parents handed over a letter containing their demands to the Presidential Secretariat as part of the protest. Subsequently, the protesters marched towards the Presidential Secretariat to demonstrate in its vicinity. Several other protests, also calling for the immediate implementation of proposed education reforms for Grade 6, were held across the island today. Off the back of these protests, stakeholders shared their insights on the demonstrations and the way forward in terms of proposed education reforms.
rubrics කියන ක්‍රමයට තමයි
Students are expected to be evaluated according to the rubrics method under the modular system. These parents are requesting reform implementations without knowing any of this. If there are grade 6 teachers present at the protest site in front of the Ministry of Education, I'd like to request them to explain the rubrics method to the protesters. If they provide an accurate explanation and if all parents claim to have knowledge of the rubrics method, then we would propose that education reforms be implemented in 2026 itself.
6 ශ්‍රේණිය ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණ 2026 දීම දෙමු කියලා අපි යෝජනා කරනවා.
මොඩියුල් සම්බන්ධ ප්‍රශ්නේදී
On the module matter, they have now found a culprit. An official working for the English department was suspended with the aim of covering up their blunder. Who is at fault? Those who proofread and approve the modules are also at fault, are they not? They intend to wipe the stain of their reputation by throwing a typesetter or the module's author under the bus. They intend to wipe the stain of their reputation by throwing a typesetter or the module's author under the bus.
පහළ දැන් අලකට තල්ලු කරලා දැන් මේගොල්ලෝ සූදානම් වෙලා තියෙනවා.
Several political representatives also expressed their views on controversies surrounding education reforms.
අද ඒ ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණ
We are trying our best to rectify our mistake and implement education reforms for the betterment of our children. Against such a backdrop, the opposition is trying to spread misinformation and brainwash the public, including students and parents. The opposition is trying to ensure the failure of the education reforms which the entire country is expecting us to implement.
අද විපක්ෂය උත්සාහ කරමින් තියෙනවා.
ආණ්ඩුව සමාජ සංවාදයක් කරනවා කියලා.
There's no point of the government welcoming social debate on this matter now through their speeches. That is something that they should have done earlier. A social debate should have been initiated prior to the presentation of education reforms.
සුපර්මෑන්ගෙන් පස්සේ මේ ආණ්ඩුවේ කට්ටිය තමයි දකිමින් ඉන්නේ.
Meanwhile, Deputy Director General of the National Institute of Education, Darshana Samaravira, was placed on compulsory leave over with the Grade 6 module controversy. 2 female officials of the National Institute of Education were also suspended from duty over the same incident.
The Pivituruhela Urumaya today lodged a complaint with the Criminal Investigation Department calling for an investigation into the controversial remarks made by the President in Jaffna. Meanwhile, the opposition urges the President not to make statements which incite separatism and religious extremism for a political gain.
The president's claim that certain groups visiting Jaffna and passing the Jayashri Mahabodhi during Poya days do so with the intention of inciting hatred rather than upholding virtue has sparked discussions among various parties. Pivituruhela Urumaya filed a complaint today with the Criminal Investigation Department requesting an investigation into the president's statement.
අපි අහන්න කැමති ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ සහ මේ ආණ්ඩුවෙන්
We would like to ask the president whether people who worship freely while maintaining their ethnic identity now need his permission to do so. We are aware that the president enjoys immunity from legal proceedings while in office. Therefore, we have requested the CID to take legal action once his term ends, particularly regarding the statement he made which violates the ICCPR.
ප්‍රකාශය තමන්ගේ දූරයත් එක්ක කරපු ප්‍රකාශයට විරුද්ධව
Several public representatives also shared their views on the president's statement.
ජනාධිපතිතුමා දැන් අපිට අපේ අම්මලා තාත්තලාට
The president has stated that our mothers and fathers should not take precepts beyond Anuradhapura. I would like to tell the president that no one listens to his preachings anymore. He may believe he can influence people by saying one thing in the north and another in the south. I urge him not to make that mistake.
ජනාධිපතිතුමා වරද්ද ගන්න එපා.
මේ ඩයස්පෝරාවේ අවශ්‍යතාවයටවත්
Simply because the diaspora decides it or because votes are being sought through separatism, it is wrong for a president to make such a statement. We call on the president to avoid exploiting separatism for political gain.
ඒ මතින් දේශපාලන වාසි ගන්න උත්සාහ දරන්න එපා.
අද මේ පරාද වෙච්ච දේශපාලන කණ්ඩායම් උත්සාහ කරනවා.
The defeated political parties are attempting to magnify minor issues that have long burdened the public. However, the incumbent government will not allow this. We will prevent such actions and uphold dignity and rights of all citizens.
ජීවත් වෙන රටක් දකින්න.
Several parties accuse the government of attempting to manipulate the results of the quality assurance tests conducted on the alleged substandard coal shipments, stating that this has resulted in the publication of the report being delayed. Meanwhile, a press conference convened by the Ceylon Electricity Board regarding the Norachole power plant was cancelled earlier today.
During a recent parliamentary session, Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna parliamentarian D.V. Chanaka stated that the government has incurred a financial loss of 10 billion rupees due to the importation of substandard coal for operations at the Lakvijaya coal power plant in Norachole. In response, the Ministry of Energy issued a statement clarifying that the quality of the imported coal cannot yet be determined as the results of the quality assurance tests conducted at the unloading harbour are yet to be released. According to the ministry, any deviations in coal quality will be subject to penalties in accordance with the government's agreement with the supplier. Against this backdrop, several parties raised concern today over the fact that the results of the quality assurance test are yet to be made public.
According to the report, the energy output of coal should range between 5,900 and 6,200 kilocalories per kilogram. However, government lab test results show value only ranging between 5,600 and 5,800 kilocalories. The maximum permissible coal ash content is 16%, but test results indicate levels between 20 and 22. This clearly confirms that the coal shipments are substandard. As a result, the government decided not to rely on government lab findings and instead send samples to a lab in India operated by Netherlands-based company. According to the cabinet spokesperson, the report was due on the 16th, yet it is yet to be released. The delay is due to attempts to manipulate the report. Although the report has been prepared, it is being withheld. If these substandard coal shipments are accepted, the boiler of the power plant could be damaged due to the higher ash content. Under clause 3.8 of the agreement, any resulting loss would be borne by the purchaser, the government, while the supplier would not be held accountable. Current coal stocks are sufficient until February or March. However, if an issue arises, importing new shipments would take time, which could become a serious concern. We must examine how the coal was imported and where the discrepancy occurred. The samples submitted prior to the importation must be compared with the coal that was actually received from South Africa. We have received reports indicating that nearly 7 billion rupees have been lost due to corruption. This loss will ultimately be recovered from consumers' electricity bill. Similar corruption was seen at the Fertilizer Corporation. They are experienced in manipulating tenders. Due to corruption, they have failed to reduce electricity tariffs by 32% as promised by the president.
Meanwhile, a press conference scheduled to be convened today by the Ceylon Electricity Board regarding the Norachole coal power plant was cancelled this morning. Internal sources at the board stated that the issue of the substandard coal was among the matters due to be addressed at the briefing.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa today called for a constitutional amendment to enshrine healthcare as a fundamental right. He made this proposal while addressing a discussion with representatives of the healthcare sector held in Colombo.
A discussion with representatives of the healthcare sector themed Protect Free Healthcare was held this afternoon at the opposition leader's office under the patronage of opposition leader Sajith Premadasa.
The Constitution has failed to appreciate the importance of healthcare. It is time for us to give healthcare its rightful place within the Constitution. We propose healthcare to be enshrined as fundamental human right. Today we face several serious concerns. On one hand, we strongly believe that sufficient funds are not being allocated to the health sector. On the other hand, our international rankings clearly reflect this neglect. In life expectancy, we were ranked 54th in 2020, fell to 63rd in 2023 and further declined to 74th in 2024. In the Global Health Security Index, we rank 67th, far below acceptable standards. In the Knowledge Index, we occupy the 96th rank. Instead of neglecting healthcare, it must be nurtured with prioritized attention. This requires constitutional amendments to ensure that health receives the importance it truly deserves.
Welcome back. Now, President Anura Dissanayake today reviewed Sri Lanka's progress towards a digital economy. Chairing a high-level meeting at the Presidential Secretariat, the head of state reviewed 2025 digital projects and new initiatives planned under the 2026 budget.
The discussion focused on accelerating Sri Lanka's shift to a cashless economy, including the digitalization of government institutions, expansion of QR-based transactions, establishment of a national cloud infrastructure center, high-speed broadband connectivity, single-window public services, digital identity cards, and the digitalization of traffic spot fines. The President also highlighted the need to formally document economic activities in rural areas, noting that much of the sector remains informal and must be integrated into national development planning. Officials further reviewed the performance and future plans of key institutions under the Ministry of Digital Economy, including Sri Lanka CERT, the Data Protection Authority, the Telecommunication Regulatory Commission, and the GovTech Institute, along with proposed new recruitments. Meanwhile, the Baladaksha Martha flyover, the third in Colombo's city flyover project, was officially opened today. Built to ease traffic congestion, the 340-meter-long, 11-meter-wide flyover allows vehicles to move from Golface towards Sir Chittampalam A. Gardner Mawatha in Kompanya Vidya. The new flyover is expected to improve traffic flow in one of the city's busiest corridors.
රුපියල් මිලියන් 2700කින්
We completed a bridge that could have been built 3 years ago for only 2.7 billion rupees, but additional cost of 1 billion rupees were incurred due to delays and late fees. The cost of economic mismanagement by previous regime, which contributed to the country's financial difficulties, will continue to have repercussions.
ආර්ථික අපරාධවල ඒ කර්ස් එක දිගට එනවා.
The Grama Niladhari Trade Union Alliance withdrew from the disbursement of the 500,000 rupee compensation granted for residencies partially damaged following Cyclone Ditwa. The association alleges deficiencies in the circular governing the payment procedure. Meanwhile, renovations have commenced at several sections on the Northern Railway line, resulting in temporary closures at several areas effective today.
The Northern Railway line will remain temporarily closed at several sections in view of the renovation and maintenance work following the Cyclone Ditwa. Sri Lanka Railways announced that the section from Maho to Anuradhapura will remain closed from today, while the Maho-Omantha section will be closed from the 26th onwards. The deadly landslide which occurred in the Pudukkulama area within the Ibagamu division have claimed the lives of 7 individuals, including 4 minors. As the landslides have submerged a number of residences and roads in collapsed earth, many residences have evacuated the area. Similarly, heavy flooding and landslides in Kabaragala in Mandaramnura have completely destroyed access roads, farmlands and houses, leaving a number of people displaced. Local residents remain housed at temporary shelters. Meanwhile, several residents of the Dotaloya estate within the Aranayaka division arrived at the divisional secretariat to voice concerns over the damaged access routes in the area, which are yet to be reconstructed. The divisional secretary who arrived at the premises held brief discussions with the residents.
You are all undoubtedly aware of the extensive damage sustained by the roadways as a result of the disaster. We personally visited the affected site to carry out a detailed assessment of the damages. The responsibility of this matter lies within the Provincial Road Development Authority. Following the allocation and approval of necessary funds, they have commenced the required maintenance work. This is not a task that can be concluded within a brief period. It is a process that demands time and careful execution.
Against this backdrop, the Grama Niladhari Trade Union Alliance decided to withdraw from the disbursement of the 500,000 rupee compensation package for residential properties that were partially damaged as a result of Cyclone Ditwa. Co-chairman of the alliance, Nandana Ranasinghe, stated that the decision was taken due to deficiencies identified in the circular governing the payment procedure.
මේ නව චක්‍රලේඛයේ අනුව ගෙවීම් කටයුතුවලදී පැහැදිලි තක්සේරුවක්
Per the circular, the release of funds must be preceded by a thorough and proper assessment. Does this imply that compensation should be granted even for pre-existing structural cracks? The officers responsible for disbursing these funds are unable to determine whether the structural damages occurred before or after the cyclone. Therefore, this process necessitates the involvement of qualified technical officers to ensure an accurate evaluation. There are other significant concerns regarding the circular. It permits unauthorized settlers to claim compensation. As a consequence, Grama Niladhari officers are being subjected to immense pressure. Without a proper assessment, funds cannot be released as there is a serious risk that the officer concerned could be accused of fund misappropriation, potentially leading to suspension from duty. Therefore, it is crucial that we take all necessary measures to ensure our officers are not exposed to such consequences.
Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya departed for Switzerland this morning to take part in the 56th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum's annual meeting for 2026, themed A Spirit of Dialogue, are set to take place from today until the 23rd of January in Davos Klosters, Switzerland. World leaders from government, business, civil society and academia will convene in Davos to engage in forward-looking discussions to address global issues and set priorities. This year's session will see the attendance of over 3,000 global leaders. During her visit, the Prime Minister is scheduled to hold a series of high-level bilateral meetings with key international leaders and heads of global institutions. Welcome back. Now in your business news, the National Gem and Jewellery Authority has taken steps to relax the tax system previously applied to gem imports. Speaking at a government media conference, the chairman stated that the authority also plans to establish a gold refinery in Sri Lanka in the near future.
We have been working on revising the calculation process for the VAT and Social Security contribution levy imposed on gem imports with the aim of providing importers greater relief than before. Under our proposal, a designated value is assigned to each package of imported gems. For precious stones, including sapphires, rubies and emeralds, 1 kilogram is valued at $900. VAT and SCCL are then calculated based on this value, which amounts to approximately $184.50 or 57,195 Sri Lankan rupees. For semi-precious stones, 1 kilogram is valued at $50, meaning the importer only needs to pay around $10.25 in taxes. For imports of less than 1 kilogram, we have assigned values per carat, with 1 carat valued at $5 and VAT calculated at approximately $1. We have also proposed only considering 4% of the revenue generated from gem exports as profit and applying SSCL only to that portion. This proposal is still under discussion. In 2026, we aim to achieve $1 billion in export revenue, and we believe that these simplified tax measures will stimulate the gem industry. Due to the economic slowdown, the import of gold and vehicles were restricted. Additionally, a significant tax of 45% is imposed on gold imports, which many businesses cannot bear. This tax remains in place due to obligations under the IMF's Extended Fund Facility Program, so we are currently unable to make changes. As an alternative, we are exploring the establishment of a gold refinery in Sri Lanka. Mined gold contains various impurities, and refining involves several stages, including primary and secondary processing. We are in discussions with the relevant factories regarding the level of impurities in imported gold and the appropriate stage of refining. These discussions are ongoing. The Colombo bourse closed in negative territory today as a result of price losses in counters such as Colombo Dockyard, Commercial Bank and Nation Trust Bank. The benchmark ASPI declined by 0.44% to close at 23,627.87, while the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 decreased by 0.32% to end the day at 6,539.35. Market turnover was 4.68 billion rupees. The capital goods sector was the highest contributor to the market turnover, followed by the materials sector. Up next, we have Mushraf Ibrahim from Capital Alliance in our next segment, Markets in View.
The Sri Lankan stock market recorded a mixed performance during the week ended 16 January 2026, which comprised of 4 trading days. The all-share price index closed the week at 23,731.60 points, inching up 0.33% week-on-week from 23,654.30 points in the previous week. Meanwhile, the S&P SL 20 index straightened to 6,560.08 points, making a 0.88% weekly gain compared to 6,503.02 points points last week. Market activity moderated during the shortened trading week, with total equity turnover declining to LKR 24.15 billion, down 27.4% week on week from LKR 33.24 billion previously. Average daily turnover stood at approximately LKR 6 billion, reflecting relatively subdued participation following the exceptionally strong activity seen in the prior week.
With that, here's a look at today's exchange rates. That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.
From across the nation and around the world, this is Sri Lanka's #1 news source, Ada Derana.